Well, welcome back to Grindhouse, my little Grindhouse thing here. I gotta laugh at something because I guess it was last night I decided to watch a movie called The Octagon. And the only reason I decided to watch this movie was because Lee Van Cleef was the co-star of the star Chuck Norris. Basically, this movie is almost incomprehensible to me. For a lot of reasons. Number one, Chuck has these voices speaking in his head that have an echo, like he's thinking out loud and they have an echo. It's almost reminiscent of what Ole Anderson did with the Shockmaster with the echo in the background from WCW, but that's fucking bullshit anyway. Chuck is battling ninjas in this one. And for whatever reason, Lee Van Cleef is there as McCarn, who really, I guess he was a part of these ninja hunters or something like that, but honestly, you could have filled his role with a cardboard cutout of Lee, because he shows up, he disappears, he shows up, he disappears. He's hardly there. I guess this was made in between his trips back and forth to Europe toward the end of his career. And, you know, these companies always put a name star next to somebody they're trying to shore up in case they fuck up. I mean, case in point, he did Good Guys Wear Black. There's another Chuck Norris. He had James Franciscus, Jim Backus, and Dana Andrews. Force of One had Jennifer O'Neill, Clu Gulager, and Ron O'Neill. And the worst one, Eye for an Eye, had Christopher Lee, Richard Roundtree, Mako, and Professor Teru Tanaka. Professor Tanaka, real name unknown because he was Hawaiian and he wasn't really from Japan, that's why he never spoke, was a martial arts expert. He used to teach martial arts because he was a sergeant in the U.S. Army stationed in Germany. And he was teaching martial arts over there when somebody convinced him to get into pro wrestling. So here's a legit martial artist facing Chuck Norris in a film, which pretty much falls flat. But, you know, I'm watching this thing last night. And it's like, there's some kills, there's this, there's that. It seems like there's a ninja training camp with a bunch of ninjas in training who at the end, after Chuck's best friend, played by Art Hindle, is killed by his childhood friend. I mean, you gotta watch this to follow it. There's flashbacks and everything. Obviously, this is a rivalry going back to childhood, as, you know, Chuck's character was raised with a Japanese kid, and they hate each other. So it even ends weirdly. You don't even, you know, all of a sudden something happens and the credits roll. I guess the best way to define Chuck as an actor is to read something out of the new Grindhouse Purgatory, which was an interview by Bill Winkler, who was a friend of Jonathan Harris, who taught Chuck Norris acting for his first film, Good Guys Wear Black. He was hired by the director. Jonathan thought Chuck was a bad actor, and like a puppeteer, he tried to show Chuck how to act in every scene, except the fighting stunt sequences. Sound familiar? It was awful for Jonathan. In one scene, Chuck was in an airport when he walked up to a girl working behind the ticket booth, and Jonathan explained the scene to him. Now, Chuck, you're going to walk up to that sexy girl, and you're going to say your lines, but in doing so, you're going to look at her like and think you want to fuck her. It was impossible. Chuck did it half-assed. Later at a location in Indian Dunes, Chuck started getting pissed off at Jonathan's coaching. Why do I have to say these fucking lines? Clint Eastwood doesn't talk. Charles Bronson doesn't talk. Jonathan replied, you want to tell the director that? A knock came on the dressing room door. We're ready, Chuck. Well, we ain't, barked Jonathan. They rehearsed the scene again and Chuck blew up. He jumped to his feet as if to hit Jonathan, and Jonathan said, Chuck, if you raise 1 foot to me, I'm gone forever. Chuck slowly sat back down. Later on the set, the director had an actor stand on a hill with Chuck on the lower part. Chuck looked shorter than the guy he was speaking to. After the scene was shot, Jonathan walked over to Chuck and said, do you know what just happened? Chuck replied, no, what? You look like a fucking midget, that's what. Another lesson learned. At the end of the day, Chuck's wife would pester Jonathan asking, is my husband going to be a superstar? Is my husband going to be a superstar? Jonathan would tell her over and over again, the picture will tell us, the picture will tell us. Finally, at the film's premiere, when the movie was over, she approached him again. Well, you saw it. Is my husband going to be a superstar? Jonathan, nearly having thrown up seeing Chuck's awful acting performance, replied, the next picture will tell the story. When the picture wrapped, Chuck gave Jonathan a present for all his hard work, and to Jonathan's surprise, it was a plaque with a carving of Chuck's face on it saying, thanks, Chuck. Is all Jonathan could say. Jonathan was supposed to receive 1% of the gross of the profits from Good Guys Wear Black, his standing operating procedure in Hollywood. But he never saw a penny of it. When Chuck Norris went on to be a superstar, it floored Jonathan. Who the hell would have thought that Chuck would actually make it? It's unbelievable, and I'm stunned to this day. Well, that about wraps it up as far as his acting ability is concerned. The thing is, when I'm watching this film, there's almost a love scene that's very uncomfortable to watch, and it almost made me want to rewatch Linda Lovelace's Dogorama film. I don't know. You know, the whole thing with Chuck Norris is I never really gave a shit about some of these pictures, and like I said, he was one of these 80s action stars that probably the only one that didn't beat his wife, because Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal sure and shit beat theirs. And, you know, and Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal are the direct-to-DVD kings. Seagal, as we know, is a good friend of Vladimir Putin, and he should move over there and stay the fuck over there. If you want to ever really want to see William Forsythe's foam at the mouth, bring up Steven Seagal's name in a conversation and he will lose it. He said that pretty much Steven Seagal was the worst piece of shit he ever worked with. As far as Jean-Claude Van Damme, well, Brian James told me he had to hold off from hitting him because something about him kicking his wife in the face during an argument. Two real gems there, and like I said, Chuck was going to be in Expendables 2, but refused to appear unless the film had a PG-13 rating. Go figure. Basically, I was never a fan of this guy, and the only thing that probably saved his movie career, or enhanced his movie career, was that he hooked up with Cannon Films, and those two guys were crazy about having these stars there, and somebody told me that basically they had Norris under contract and Charles Bronson under contract. So they had two piles of script, one for Charles, one for Chuck. And they were pretty much interchangeable except for the missing in action stuff, because nobody would buy Bronson as a Vietnam vet, even though he did serve his country in WW2 and was wounded in combat. The whole thing was, all these films were interchangeable, especially the Cannon ones. If you watched Invasion USA and Death Wish 3, you'll see that Charles Bronson blows up the bad guy with a shoulder-held rocket launcher. I think I called it a Laws rocket. Chuck Norris does the same thing to Richard Lynch in Invasion USA. It's all bullshit. I mean, honestly, you couldn't make me watch a Chuck Norris film after last night. Like I said, the only reason I watched it was to see what Lee Van Cleef would do in it, and basically he did nothing. He was there for name value only because his name on a marquee would draw people into a theater. So, yep, I'm not a fan of Chuck Norris, nor any of these really weird-ass 80s action karate-style films, which were basically the bane of 42nd Street toward the end, because that's all you got. Them and the studio-produced slasher films. On a personal note today, I would like to say that I have given up hope of ever establishing a website. A friend of mine paid for a domain name which ran out 3 days ago. I didn't renew it for the simple reason that I'm tired of everybody telling me how easy it is to do this shit when it's not. When you're not a tech guy, it's not easy. I'm also tired of people saying they're going to help me and never do it. I don't need it, okay? At this stage of the game, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I don't need a website. I think that my reputation from word of mouth has been good enough where I can, sell my magazine. Not that I'm going to make a fortune on this thing, but I just want to keep this in the public eye, because people tend to forget these films, and my former magazine, Grindhouse Purgatory, kept it in the public eye, but unfortunately, because of, I've already explained that, not going to go into it. Pretty much, we're doing very well with this magazine. It's been very well received. Like I said, as far as a website, it ain't going to happen. I'm on, you can see me here, you can find me on Facebook. Maybe I'll do a 42nd Street Pete fan page just to placate some people. But, like I said, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I really feel that I have a decent reputation, that I haven't fucked anyone over, and I think I've treated people fairly. So I will continue to do so. And more exciting news is that I just spoke to Nick, who edited the Two-Fisted Tales of Times Square, and he's moving on to the second book, A Whole Bag of Crazy 2, No Safe Space, working title. And we'll be working on that during the summer, and we hope to have it ready for the fall. So I know a lot of people have been waiting for it. It's been really hard to get shit done during the pandemic, and like I said, with some of this bullshit that I've been going through. But being that I got good news on the health front and I'm feeling a little bit better about things, I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to dive in here feet first, and Grindhouse Resurrection number 3 is already in the works. So it's all good. So that's our show for today. And again, fuck Chuck Norris. I don't know why I keep saying that. He's an asshole. But I want to welcome all the new subscribers. Thank all the old subscribers for putting up with me. And you guys all stay safe, and we'll catch you on the flip side.